Good morning. Welcome to worship this morning. We should start with thank you to Carolyn Meyer for playing the organ this morning. Thank you, Carolyn. Let's give Carolyn a round of applause and embarrass the heck out of her. Reminder that there is coffee and conversation this morning after worship, so please take a few minutes to go downstairs and hang out and see what kind of goods there may be. Some of you may remember a movie from a few years ago. I hesitate to try and recall how long ago it was, because it's probably longer ago than I remember. The movie was called Green Mile. Anybody see the movie Green Mile? Yeah. Boy, that was a gut wrencher, wasn't it? That was a movie that emotionally grabbed us and turned us inside out. It was about death row in a southern prison in the 30s. And for me, the interesting dynamic in that movie was the way that guards and inmates dealt with what it meant to live and die on death row. They devoted themselves to not mentioning execution. They devoted themselves to in no way recognizing why they were where they were. They devoted themselves to not recognizing the approaching time. To recognize, to make public why they were there and what was coming. The execution of one of them would be more than they could cope with, so they did not speak of it. It was as if by not mentioning execution wouldn't happen. It was as if by not talking about it, it wouldn't be there. We too are very good about wanting to avoid the immediacy of the times. We would like to keep things out there with some fanciful wishing that the time will never arrive. It may be keeping death out there, or illness, or whatever it may be that threatens our security. If we don't talk about it, it doesn't exist. Do you remember the first time you accepted the dare to jump off the high board at the public pool? I remember growing up in Altamont, we went to Vandalia to the pool. And my cousin went off the high board, and he dared me to do it. And I thought, this is a piece of cake. It doesn't look very high. Till I got up there, and I stood on the end of the board, and I realized being all in and totally committed to this swimming and diving thing was not my cup of tea. Now, I did go off the high board one time, but never again. I wanted to keep it out there. I'd had enough. I didn't want to risk doing it again. Now, we, like the characters in the Green Mile, especially like to keep death out there. Never talked about, never anticipated, never prepared for. If we don't think about it and we don't talk about it, it won't happen. How many people have heard yourselves or others say, I want my death to be quick and easy and unexpected. I don't want to lie around thinking about it. I don't want thinking about it to in any way drive my life. I'm a country music fan, and one of my favorites from some years ago has this apt line in it. Everybody wants to go to heaven. Anybody know the rest of it? Everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die. If we don't think about it or talk about it, it won't happen. Some of you know one of my good friends, the Norwegian Ole. Now, Ole was a Lutheran. He went to church every Sunday. And one Sunday, to liven things up, they brought a revivalist into the Lutheran church, which by itself is a pretty strange thing to do. Revivaling a Lutheran is a pretty hard thing to do. But he came, and oh man, was he stoking the fire. If you want to go to heaven, he said, stand up and shout. And yes, like Ole's church, you all sit there. If you want to go to heaven, stand up and shout. You've had 2 chances, and have you gotten up yet? No. Now, it was true in Ole's church that given the second round, people started to stand up. And by the 3rd time, everybody was standing up, except Ole. And Ole was glued to his seat. The revivalist did his best, but he could not get Ole to stand up for nothing. And after the service, he went up to Ole. He wanted to find out how Ole could remain so unmoved when everybody else in that Lutheran congregation had come to their feet. Why didn't you join the others? He asked Ole. Well, Ole replied, I just figured you was getting up a load to go right now. You got to have a love for Scandinavian humor. I like it because there's nothing funny about being German. Now, some of you, especially I think probably the men, recognize what for years has been my wife's favorite response when we're shopping, and my eyes fall onto something. Even as I just pick it up to look at it, what does she say? And what does your spouse say?
What do you need that for? You don't need that.
Next time. We're next timers. Next time. For a period of time, when I was working at a hospital in Nebraska, some of the things that I was involved in became topics of discussion on a couple of local radio talk shows, and I became aware of something called the countdown timer. Radio has to move along. You can't just meander when you are talking on the radio. And so they had these 20-second countdown timers sitting on the counter in front of you as you were sitting at a microphone taking calls from people. You didn't have a lot of time to think about it. You had to say it now. You had to do it now, and you had to be quick about it. You couldn't put it off. You couldn't put it aside. And you certainly couldn't say, next time. You had to do it at that moment. In the story of Jonah, God did give the Ninevites 40 days to get ready, but he refused to extend it. And 40 days is a pretty short time. Paul wrote to the church at Corinth and said, "What I mean, my friends, is this: the time we live in will not last long, for the whole frame of this time is passing away. I want you to be free from anxious care." So, if we are thinking about actively the world in which we live, the times in which we live, how are we to be? What are we to do? How are we to think and to speak? Who will tell us? Who will tell us what to do? Jesus says, adultery isn't about an action, it's about a thought. Murder isn't about an action, it's about a thought. How are we to be? How are we to act? One of the political issues that gets bantered about is the amount of regulation in government, whether it's local or state or federal regulation. We started out with a few good ideas about some things that clearly needed to be regulated in some way. The Federal Register of Regulations is now in excess of 1 million pages. And you think memorizing the catechism is tough. But it's not a new phenomenon. We did not invent over-regulation. Regulation has been around from the get-go. In the book of Exodus, God gave the first set of regulations. Anybody recall those? The 10 commandments. But after that, in Scripture comes the book of Exodus, which is 27 chapters of do's and don'ts, and 30 more chapters follow in the book of Deuteronomy. It was as if God said, you know, whipping out those first 10 was pretty easy. I want to see how far I can take this. Maybe I'll tweak things a little bit, and maybe I need to explain everything a little bit more. And then the rabbis got a hold of Leviticus and Deuteronomy, And they have now generated 6,200 pages of rabbinic explanation of the books of Leviticus and Deuteronomy. Regulations that cover every aspect of beliefs and behaviors and diet, customs and ethics and attitudes. Jesus says, I want you to be free from anxious care. I want you to want to, not have to. And I don't want you to fear wanting to. I want you to embrace it. I want you to be all in with me. Jesus was walking by the Sea of Galilee when he saw Simon and Andrew on the lake working with a casting net. And they were fishermen. They were about their daily job. Jesus stopped and said to them, come with me, and I will make you fishers of men. Now they didn't say, can you come back tomorrow? Can you give me a couple hours? I don't think this is a good idea. I've got a family to feed. I can't talk about this. Scripture says, at once they left their nets and they followed him. They went all in. When he had gone a little further, he saw James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John, who were in their boat overhauling their nets, and he called them. And they left their father Zebedee in the boat with the hired hands, and they were off to follow him. Most of us are most familiar with the Gospel of Luke because Luke contains the most extensive telling of the nativity story. But I suggest to you sometime read the first 2 chapters of the book of Luke and then read the first couple of chapters of the Gospel of Mark. Because the Gospel of Mark skips over all of the nativity story. Mark jumps right in with Jesus. He's all in with who Jesus is. He gives a few words to describe John the Baptist. He gets Jesus to the river to be baptized, and Jesus is then off and running, calling and preaching. He calls fishermen to follow him. And he has no discussion with them. There's no, here's the pluses and minuses if you listen to my offer. Here's the benefits from this job. There's no investigation of the financial stability and ability and sustainability of this ministry. No one asks how the bills are going to get paid. There's no consultation by those who go all in with their family, their friends, their lawyers, or their financial planners. There's no delayed enlistment option. There is just, come with me. Put down your nets, get off the fence, let go of other pursuits. I have need of you. There is work to do in the kingdom. As one commentator says, the immediacy of grace asks for resolution now. We dare not be lulled into thinking that grace means that you can wait around another day. That is not the meaning of grace. Jesus says, follow me, and then moves on. The decision is now and forever. And when the decision is made, the time is filled full to the brim. I love the last line of the gospel this morning. Jesus says, let your word be yes, yes, or no, no. Anything less comes from the evil one. Jesus dares us, calls us to be all in. He accepts us as we are, but he is never content to leave us as we are. To believe in Jesus is to have an urgent awareness of who Jesus is and his call to us. Come and follow me now, not later. For you know not the hour of the day. Come and follow me, for now we must be about my Father's work. Come and follow me. Lose your life in mine, and you will have life. Jesus says, I invite you to be all in right now with me. Give me your life, and I will give you mine. Amen.